Okay, so now for this part, what we're gonna start to do is start to develop our line angles. Okay, so anywhere that I have in blue is an area that I'm gonna want light to reflect off of. So I'm gonna want light to reflect right along this line here, okay? So what that's gonna require is removal and a little bit of accentuation or removal kind of in this area right here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna mark that first. Now, whenever we look at a tooth, when we're talking about a central incisor, we want the mesial height of contour of the facial to be slightly more pronounced than the distal height. So, as we start looking at the distal of this tooth and where we want our light to reflect, somewhere right along here, we're going to start to maybe remove a little bit here and a little here, but not nearly as much as we're going to remove on this side here. Now, because we want to give kind of the appearance of mamelons, we want to make this center height of prominence. Make sure we don't remove much from this because then it'll look flat or scooped out. Now the last thing we're going to do, very simply, is do a little bit of these little horizontal developmental lines, kind of like lines of Retzius. So something along that. So anywhere blue is an area that we're going to keep. Anywhere red is an area that we're going to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of do that for the rest of our teeth to try to make it symmetrical. So same thing. If you notice, when these come out of the middle, they're not always perfect where we want the lines to reflect. So you'll see the pencil mark has a little difficulty sometimes keeping a straight line. So that just shows you an area that we're going to have to kind of contour in order to get the shape that we want. Okay, same thing here, a little bit on the distal. Want to keep our center area alone. Remove a tiny bit, remove more on the mesial. And we'll do our horizontal lines for Retzius. Okay, so again, here we go. Here we go. Same thing on a lateral. Again, we want the light to reflect. Okay, here. Here. Not on a lateral incisor, we're not going to have that central height of prominence nearly as much. So what we're going to rely on is removing a little bit here with a small extension, almost like the shape of a Y. And again, just a little bit of removal here. And our horizontal lines of Retzius. And again, get rid of some of that and get rid of some of that. All right, so now we'll come through. Same thing on this lateral incisor. Make our mark. And we'll have to use a sharp pencil edge to create this line because you can see there's a little concavity that we're gonna have to deal with there. Want our light to reflect here because this lateral is a little bit wider due to the patient's asymmetry. So when we turn this lateral to the side, I want this new blue line to be where my light reflects, and everything distal to that we want to hide. Okay, so we're going to bring all this back to make our lateral incisor. Even though it's the same width as it was before, we're going to play with that light. So when we look at this tooth and you follow that blue line, anything distal to that blue line is going to be tucked back and not catch anybody's eye. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here, almost like that Y type of appearance, almost like a straight line down here, and our horizontal developmental lines here. Okay. Looks good. Okay. Last two teeth. And I'm doing this a lot slower than I normally would just to kind of illustrate the point. Usually, unless I'm doing a single central incisor or a single lateral or a single canine, I really don't even go through this process of marking it. I just kind of have it in my mind's eye what I like to do. So now with this, okay, whenever we have a canine where we're going to be making the turn, and this is where we're going to end our prosthetic treatment, what we want to make sure is this line angle, okay, on the distal needs to be a lot further forward, and we need to take this distal area and tuck it back. Again, we don't want our canine to be bulky, okay? Now, an important area too on this patient is we're going to create on this canine, not necessarily a line that goes down. All I really want to create is this mesial facial fossa that we see right here on this canine. If you see it kind of sitting in my hand here. Not a whole lot here. Maybe a little bit of a developmental groove, not a ton. And again, a little bit of removal here. Okay. Same thing here. Now this tooth, as you can see in our design, when you look at it from the facial, doesn't look very wide. But because we're jumping a crossbite, you can see how wide we had to become. Because anytime we bring a tooth facial, that creates arch length. And when we create arch length, that creates a bigger distance that our tooth is going to have to span in order to prevent having a diastema on either side. So what we're going to do is make sure we play with this light to help us out. So I'm not going to do any sort of accentuation of anything back here. Okay, everything's going to be subtractive. So again, here, here, and then just very light brushing here to make sure that as we turn this tooth and we turn the corner, none of that catches anybody's eye. So overall, that is my basic markings that I'll do on my teeth as we go through. Let me see if I can zoom in. Everything looks relatively symmetrical. And now we're going to go ahead and just do a single central incisor, walk you through kind of step by step how we do that. Okay, so here's the order of which I kind of go through and start removing stuff, okay? So we're gonna start with our Brassler. This is our dialite wheel, okay? So you can see right here, if you're interested in ordering it, I have no financial interest whatsoever. This is just the company that I use. So here is the figure number. Okay, there's the head size, all right? But we're gonna start with this by removing some of our kind of red lines that we see. Then usually what I'll do is we'll take the medium knife, we'll go along and we'll kind of smooth out any sort of maybe deeper grooves that this blue one left behind. We then use the feather light wheel, okay, which still comes in a kit, looks kind of like this, porcelain polishing system. And I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna go ahead and kind of smooth out even further any sort of major line or groove that I left behind, then followed by our feather light gray, and then finally our dialite knife point to get a really high shine when I try it in the patient's mouth, so that way we can check all of our contours. All right, so let me get all of these off the tray, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start with a central incisor. Okay, so to start with the central incisor, I'll turn my handpiece on. My handpiece is going to be at about 20,000 RPMs. And we're going to come in right here and start our removal process, trying to maintain our blue line, okay? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go in with the edge of our wheel. All right, and we're gonna make little horizontal markings. Let's see if we can adjust our camera. So right along these horizontal kind of lines of Retzius, or horizontal developmental grooves, take our dialite across. Now, we're going to go on the mesial side in a sweeping motion to try to draw attention to this blue line where we want the light to reflect. Same thing here on the distal. Sweeping motion. And now you can see we're left with our blue lines, okay? So from here, what we're gonna do, we're gonna use our medium knife point. And now, we're gonna go in and try to smooth out any sort of rough lines that we may be left behind, okay? And usually this is in a downward motion. Sometimes I'll sweep it across in a kind of a gentle flick. Okay, there we go. We're starting to get some really nice anatomy developed. Now we're going to come over here and do the same thing. Again, starting to develop some really nice anatomy. Now, we're going to go ahead and smooth out some of our horizontal lines. And again, I'm trying to follow the blue line that I made earlier, or the pass I made with my blue knife edge instrument. And then now I'm going across it just to smooth out ever so slightly. So that way we still create kind of some horizontal interest in the way the light reflects, but we don't have really deep anatomy. Because we don't really want deep lines. We just want enough to kind of capture light. Okay. So now you can see we're starting to develop some really nice anatomical features on the facial of this tooth. I'm going to go back in here like we did previously, and we're going to sweep down along this blue line. Again, trying to leave the blue line if we can. I'm rubbing some of it off my fingers. But I'm trying to leave those blue lines as references for areas we don't want to remove, okay? So now we've got some really nice anatomy developed. So the next thing we're going to do is now we're going to go ahead and take this feather light. Now if you notice with feather lights, you have to be very careful, okay? These feathers are meant to pass in one direction, okay? So we always want them going down the crown like this. If you have them going up, you catch your margin or you rip these little fins off. So you gotta be very careful. So as you watch this spin, it's probably hard to see, but you can actually see it spinning down towards my margin. That's what we want, okay? So we're gonna go down and just kind of follow all the previous passes that I made to start getting the light to reflect very uniformly over the entire tooth. Okay, now we're gonna go horizontal, just like we did earlier. Now, hopefully you can start to see how this anatomy is developing very nicely. Now you see I have a little bump right here. We'll go ahead and we'll take care of that with our knife point. Notice how I'm always protecting my margins with my finger. The last thing you want to do on one of these is drop them and have this veneer go absolutely flying across the room. It's happened to me quite a few times. But save yourself the grief and the heartache of going around your lab trying to find it. All right, so now, hopefully, if you zoom in on this, You can appreciate the difference how the light's reflecting off of this one. Okay. Versus how it was reflecting off of this one. Okay. Now you look, a lot of the anatomy, so we can block some of the light that's coming down here. There we go. You can see how that light is reflecting very nicely, and it kind of follows exactly what we wanted on our pencil markings, right? You can see the two areas that were in blue that we wanted the light to catch. That central line was just an area that we made so we wouldn't accidentally make our tooth look too scooped and have a very deep kind of central fossa. But overall, we were doing pretty well. So now what I'm going to do is go through one more time. Okay. And on this mesial corner where we have maybe a little less than ideal contour, we're going to go ahead and just polish this back. All right, perfect. That's that. Okay. Now usually as I do all of this, I'm actually doing this sequentially, tooth by tooth, going down the dental arch, and I essentially, kind of like when you're doing oral surgery, right? You get the scalpel out once, you cut once, get the handpiece out once, you cut once of the handpiece. Same thing when you're doing all this porcelain work. Essentially, I'll typically do all of my blue adjustments, then I'll do all of my red adjustments, all of my feather light adjustments, and I'll go across all 6 teeth at one time. But just for the sake of demonstration, so you don't kind of get lost in the steps that we're doing, I'm just taking you through one tooth, start to finish, what it should look like. And I'll take a really nice photo and show you anatomically how everything turned out. Now again, this one, I run at about 20,000 RPMs. Sometimes I'll take it about 10 to start, just to really get a fine shine here. If we go too fast and we hit it with 20,000 RPMs and it goes flying, it can be a bad day for us after we just went through and did all this nice characterization. So now, we're going to come through one more time, really get that light to reflect how we want, and overall, hopefully you can see the nice kind of characterization that we have. This is actually how I'll try it in the patient's mouth. Just like this. So hopefully, this video was helpful. So we took kind of the ordinary that comes out of our mill, okay? And we kind of turn it into something a little bit more extraordinary for our patients. So here's how it comes out. And here is what it looks like when we're all done.